I'm doing great. Thank God for being above ground and taking care of me and providing for me every day, health and strength. But I'm on this video today to talk to God's people, talk real talk to y'all. Y'all see the title I put up there? Life insurance is a must, and it's not an option. There's no exception. And the reason I'm saying that today is because I had a situation I'm dealing with. And I've been going through this for many years, too many years. And I want to share this with you today. If you have breath in your body, then you have to have life insurance. Now, I am not a life insurance or insurance agent at all. I'm not. I'm not. But I want to talk real talk with you today for anybody who is above ground and you have a family, you have yourself, you have children, nieces, nephews, you got to have life insurance. You have to begin to prioritize your bills and your responsibilities. Who am I to say that? Because I'm running into this too much and I'm finding out people don't have life insurance. There are people who do, those who can afford it. I'm young, but growing up, I used to always hear my mom and then the life insurance people who have insurance, the life insurance agency would come to the house back then and they would sit down and they would go over your life insurance. And my mom had 5 kids and she always trying to finagle things to make sure we had life insurance. But what I've been running into here in the last few years is people who don't have any life insurance. You might say, well, Miss Fern, why is that important? Because life insurance is an expense that we're all responsible. If you go biblically based all through the Bible, all the way back to Genesis, Abraham had bought a plot of land so he could take and bury himself and his spouse, the children of Israel. When you go through the scriptures, you'll find out that they bought ahead of time plots for their life because they knew one day that he would go home to be with the Lord. But we're living in 2026. You got to have life insurance because if you don't have life insurance, there's an expense. I was listening to this weekend a young lady, and she has a business. She's a CPA. She has a business channel, and she was talking about life insurance. Hello, how are you? So in the conversation this weekend, she started talking about having taxes. You have to pay a burial tax when you die. If you have an estate or some kind of money, you're supposed to pay a burial tax. What happened was this weekend, when I was listening to that, um, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm just coming out here to give you an overview of why you have to have life insurance. Even if you don't have children, you have to set aside some money and get some kind of life insurance to make sure that when you pass and you move on, and when you die, that somebody's going to pay your expense. And what I've been running into over the last 10, 15 years, 20 years maybe, I'm always running into people who didn't set up life insurance for themselves and their families are now trying to deal with how are they going to bury their loved ones. And it's not fair that we don't prioritize life insurance. Yes, in the Black community, especially, we haven't had the means all the time to buy life insurance, but this is what I'm finding out more and more. I'm in a situation right now where a loved one passed and his daughters don't have the money to buy to bury him. And I've been finding this out when I go into do ministry of helps and stuff that there was never really prioritized for making sure that they would be buried and people just fluff it off and say, oh, they could cremate me. Guess what? That's a cost. That's an expense. But who's going to cremate you because the funeral home wants that money. So, God allowed me to be a blessing today to help out with some of the cost of that. But as individuals, we have to get even a small policy. If they have burial insurance, small policies, 10,000 is an average cost for burial. That's the basics. That's no big limousine. That's no flowers. That's nothing. That's entry into being buried just in the cemetery, you're looking at $10,000. So what I would encourage you to do to begin to, when you're doing your monthly budget, and you're going through and you're doing your bills and stuff, reach out to one of the insurance agencies and just get a small quote on how much is it for life insurance. When you're older and stuff, that's when a lot of times the age goes up and you can just buy that burial insurance. And it might be $50 a month. You might say that's a lot of money, Miss Fern, but at the same time, if these people want 10,000, 4,000 for cremation straight up, that's an expense. And if your children and your family doesn't have that money, somebody has to pay it. And then people want to do a GoFundMe, and you're not guaranteed people are going to give into your GoFund GoFundMe. But I want to encourage you, please investigate, do some research, and how much would it cost us for a basic policy? Not to always leave something extra for people. We don't always have that like that in the Black community. It's just simply getting buried, and then when you go in, you don't have to, yes, you love that person, but at the same time, you have to live beyond. And I've been blessed to be around people who own the funeral homes, and they'll tell you, don't overspend what you don't have. Just do enough. If it's the bare minimum of putting your loved one to rest, make sure that you have that money. If you have parents, grandparents, and they're older and stuff, sit down, have that conversation with them. It's a tough conversation to have when you're talking about death, but the biggest thing is when you go to the funeral home or you don't know where you're gonna have your body, your remains placed at. You have to be an adult enough to say, you know what, look, we have to take this serious. We have to know how are we going to pay for this burial and how are things going to be done. They pre-plan even in the Bible. Go back to Genesis. Look at Abraham. He bought a plot of land that made sure that him and his wife, they had a place to lay their family members and stuff. So be wise with your expenses. If you can go out and you can buy, McDonald's or Uber Eats or this or that, then you have to think about that extra $50. And the thing about it is, the person that I'm helping with, at the same time, I had been having this conversation with them for the past 10 or 15 years. And I told them, I said, don't leave your girls in a situation where there's no funds to bury you. And they completely ignored me. And now, the time has gone that they passed on, and these girls are facing a situation that they didn't even know that they were going to be facing. So try to get yourself an insurance policy, some little piece of insurance policy to make sure that you're set, that burden is not placed on your children. It's not fair. It's not fair. We as adults and as people living, we have to face the fact that one day we're going to take and die. We are, whether we want to or not. God gives us every day the breath of life. At the same time, while we're living, you have to begin to face the situations that one day, our children, God forbid my children would go before I did, but I let them know that they have to make sure that they have life insurance. So if you have any just moral compass of, yes, you love that person, but you have to plan. If the government can tax you on your estate when you pass and you have no control over it, because now, especially with this AI stuff, they can tell you everything about everything. But you know what I love about AI? See, they think they slick setting this up. But what I always hold to the fact is God knows more than anybody about every situation. So he know what's going on. But you plan wisely for your estate. Make sure you get some type of life insurance to make sure that your children will not have to carry that burden and figure it out and go do a GoFundMe and go ask this one and don't. And I'm telling you, when I talk about being a ministry of helping people figure out their ways of putting themselves or their husband or their spouse away, and I see people who policies they've had, and they turn around and the family members that the policies was left to walk out the door with the money and leave the kids like, but I thought, you can't think like that, y'all, no more. You have to make sure that you take and do the research, even that you could prepay for burial, you can go to a funeral home, they're licensed under the government. That money goes into a trust the states have and stuff for burial that they have to take and identify. So don't think you're wasting money, but you're investing money in your future. How you doing, April? That you can go and make sure that your loved ones are taken care, or your don't leave that burden on your children. Don't do that. I've been through too many, and I'm tired of going and hearing about people passing and there's no money, and then the kids want to get the scrapping. My thing are, why y'all gonna get up here arguing? If your parent did not, or your aunt and uncle did not plan for their funeral, shame on them. And I'm telling you, you don't want to be the one on that side where you got to go talk to a funeral director. And like myself, when my dad passed, he got insurance later on. His insurance policy was 2 months, 2 months less than the maturity, and I couldn't use his policy. So for that year and 3/4 that he was paying into his life insurance, there's a maturity date for every single life insurance for that there has to be before the insurance companies will pay out. They won't pay out if it's not had some time in their system. So 2 months shy of my dad's insurance and policy, life insurance and policy, it was no good. So they gave me back everything he paid into it, but it didn't pay his burial. And then what the funeral homes do is they'll say you have to put a sign up. They'll give you like another 2 weeks to try to get the money together. But they're a business. And what I was sharing with my nieces is that the thing is to settle up. And you may can't have that big old service. You want everybody to come. You already had a family wait and stuff for the family. That's cool. Now the time is to go ahead, settle up with the people, and move on. Well, how do you do that, Miss Fern? You're gonna have to take the short. You don't have to have the service. If your dad wanted to be cremated, then do that, pay it off. But don't sit up there accumulating more bills than you have the money to pay, because you have to live past this. You have to live beyond. They have to go on. And if not paying them another $2,000 or $3,000 just to sit in the building and have an attendance, no. So my parents and the community that God has allowed me to minister to, please try to investigate. The state only gives you, I think they said like $250 um toward a burial and stuff. That's not even enough to really call the funeral home. But I want you to consider parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever the person that you may have steward over, sit down and just have a conversation. A lot of times people, "Oh, I'm not going to talk about that." You better. Some are going to talk about it, but you be the one to introduce it to your family and say, "Hey, y'all, we got to come together and we got to figure out what are we going to do if something happens to another. If something happens to mom, if something happens to dad." And you can do it. You can do it. I've had too many rooms I've sat in. I had to be in the conversations with people and saying, you know what? You got to figure this out. We got to get this done. So I wanted to come on here and share this. It was a tough subject, and I'm praying. I'm like, God, do I do it? You know, something to help people, that you don't go out there and try to take and carry that big old load and that burden of trying to settle up to bury your loved ones. Now is not the time. I know everything is high, gas is high, rent is high, this is high, but now a insurance policy, Miss Fern, it's just that real. It's just that real. But y'all go on and have a wonderful day, and come back. I know my channel, it says diversify. I talk about many different things on my channel, but I talk about things that's going to help you move forward so that you don't have to be in situations, you know. So you never know what God's going to place on my heart to talk to people about that's real life situations. So be encouraged, don't be discouraged, and things will work out. You just gotta trust him and have faith in him that he's always with you. This is Miss Fern from FML Diversify. You have a great day and get those policies. We'll be talking with you later. Be encouraged. Bye bye.